All right. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Extreme Health Radio. Happy Friday. How are you doing? I hope you're doing great wherever you are listening in the world. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 639. Can you believe we've done 639 shows? I just can't believe it. What a journey it's been since 2012. So, talked to a lot of amazing people. So if you want to get the show notes or anything like that for today's show, all you got to do is remember 639. So go to extremehealthradio.com/639, and you can grab all the show links, sponsors, all that good stuff over there. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. This is Justin Stelman, Extreme Health Radio, and today we have Dr. Sangeeta Pati, and we're going to introduce her in just a second. We're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff, so I'll introduce her in just a sec, but I want to let you guys know of our upcoming show schedule. Let me bring that up on the screen here. All right, so we broadcast live on YouTube twice a week on Mondays and Fridays. Sometimes we do Wednesdays as well. We're going to do a couple Wednesday shows coming up here with a couple really cool people as special shows. But next Monday, or actually this coming Monday, we're going to have Jane McClellan on, and we're going to talk with her about how to starve cancer without starving yourself. So if you know of anybody that is dealing with some extra cells growing in their body, maybe join us on that show on Monday. That's going to be great. And then on next Friday, a week from today, Dr. Gerald Smith is going to be on, Reversing Cancer. Gosh, I swear, it seems like so many of our guests are talking about cancer, which is crazy, right? Because we are getting, it's 1 out of every 2 people now are being diagnosed. It was 1 out of every 3 women and 1 out of every 2 men, but after 1960, it's 50% across the board, which is, I guess, why we're having so many people talk about cancer. So Dr. Gerald Smith, he's an awesome guy. He's going to be on next Friday. And then, we've got a whole lineup of shows, a lot of cool people. So make sure to subscribe to our show if you want to join us on the live show and pass it on to your friends as well. Let's see, anything else to get to? I don't think so. So we're going to talk today about how to restore optimal health in children with Dr. Sangeeta Pati. And I first learned about her from David Wolfe. I think his interview with her years ago. And amazing doctor. She's an integrative health doctor. She practices restorative medicine. She's board certified in OBGYN, and she's the founder of Sejun Institute in Orlando, Florida. And she has a list of accolades that go a mile long. So, I will introduce her now. Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this show.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Spreading the word.
Yeah, I know. This is great. I'm super happy to have you on because, like I mentioned before, I found out about you from David Wolfe. I think that interview you did with him was years ago, right?
It was. I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, yeah.
Wow. In internet world, that's like 25 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's so funny. So you have quite a distinguished resume, medical doctor. We don't have many medical doctors on the show. We do have some, but there seems to be a lack of medical doctors with an open mind. And you definitely have an open mind, and you're helping people across the board. So I'm curious, with your medical doctor degree, are you working as a fully licensed medical doctor? And if so, have you got any issues prescribing more natural methods?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I am practicing as a fully licensed medical doctor and utilizing the wisdom that I have gained over the past almost 30 years, a long time.
Wow.
That has steered me from an initial approach that had to do with pharmacy and surgery to an approach that is heavily weighted on facilitating the healing responses of the body so that the body can really regenerate itself. So that's what I'm doing right now. So right now I'm not delivering babies anymore.
No.
And basically, treating people from infancy all the way to the age of 90, men and women. A good percentage, almost 20% of our patients are actually physicians and practitioners who understand that the first approach should always be to try to optimize the body's ability to regenerate itself.
So what is wrong with not doing that by taking pharmaceuticals or medications, or I guess focusing primarily on that? What's the issue there?
Well, the biggest issue is going to be just the common sense that we were actually born and given all of the gifts that would ever be necessary to not only heal ourselves, but also the gifts to help others heal. It's a natural human gift. And it's obvious to most of us because, of course, the very first thing we do when we get a cold is gargle with salt. We don't go run for an antibiotic.
Right.
Most people gargle with salt or get ginger. Um, it, it really is something which is inherent to us. And if you look at what's happening, I feel like the best thing that's happened is that our medical system has crashed. And when I say that, what I mean is that when it crashes and you start to see that we are not able to reduce the incidence of cancer and other kind of health things, you find people taking a much stronger stance themselves to be in the driver's seat. So it's created a wave. It's no longer somebody's trying to do something over here on the side and practice outside of the accepted standard. It may be the accepted standard, but it's the accepted standard for disease.
Yeah, it's so
And
interesting.
most people know that.
What you mentioned about cancer is interesting. We all know about President Nixon's 1971 bold declaration to the world about coming up with a cure for cancer, and the war on cancer has officially begun. And apparently, that was supposed to be a 10-year war. So, as of 1981, isn't it nice to know that there's no more cancer in the world? It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that the war on cancer has brought it to full circle to really defining it as a major problem because people view cancer as the terminal part of chronic degenerative disease. So once you have the ability to cure, if you will, cancer, you're really talking about having the ability to regenerate from any chronic disease, whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, doesn't matter. The causal mechanisms are all the same. So what it forces us to do is to go back to the cause. And when we look at the cause, you start to realize that it's all about taking advantage of nature's gifts, like the people in the blue zones, right? They live into their hundreds and under $1,000 a year as far as income, and they live without chronic disease and doctors.
Yeah, they're
So what
happy,
they're
right?
doing is really, and that's important because
Yeah.
the vibration of joy is the vibration in which the water is structured that surrounds our DNA. And that is how DNA is turned on and off. That's part of epigenetics. So joy is a critical factor. And it actually is, I would say, one of the biggest factors in the blue zone, in addition to the fact that they take advantage of the sun and grounding to the earth and breathing the oxygen and drinking structured water. And then, of course, you have the vibration of joy. That's the 5-point model.
I like that. Yeah, you have a really cool model that we'll talk about too, and we'll get to children in just a second. But what you said right there was interesting because we've heard of the work of, is it Gerald Pollack or I forget what's his name, Pollack something about
Gerard Pollack
Gerard
at
Pollack,
University of Washington.
And that was interesting about what you said about joy and how it structures the water inside of our either mitochondria or inside our cells.
If you look at the electromagnetic system of the body, the strongest electromagnetic power and field is created by the vibration of the heart in the form of heart rate variability. And heart rate variability can either be, all over the place, or it can be a very smooth, coherent structure. And those two are different. If you're in all over the place, that's a place of frustration and anxiety and worry. Whereas if you're in a place which is coherent and you're in a place of peace and calm, those two vibrations project 15 feet outside of you. So imagine how it's projecting within you. They've done, if you look at, you might have heard of Heart Math Institute, which is actually in California. And some of these studies were done in the magnetometers in University of San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out that the human heart, the field actually extends quite a bit outside of the body. And this is why, you enter a room in a rumble and people can feel it, because the communication of humans is not verbal. It is absolutely precedes us opening our mouth by the vibration that you're giving off from your heart. Now, step into the body and the question you're asking about the water. So, if you have a powerful electromagnetic field that is pervasive all throughout the body, that's going to be a powerful vibratory force to structure water. And I, I would say that if you look at all of the factors, say in the long living and the blue zones that we talked about a second ago, you're going to find that that is something that's pervasive, joy and purpose. They live into the hundreds, but they don't put their people into homes. People have a function, no matter what age they are, a critical function to pass wisdom and a critical purpose. Because without the joy and the purpose, the body doesn't really have any reason to stick around.
That's so interesting. We did a show a while back with Dr. Clay or Q Collins. I forget what his name was, but he talks a lot about deuterium. And he was talking about the mitochondria. And in that show, it was really interesting because he was talking about, I think, like complex 5 in the mitochondria is where ATP gets created. And he said we have these like little nanomotors that spin at, I think he said 9,000 revolutions a minute. And if you figure we've got 4,000, say, mitochondria per cell, up to 10,000. And these things are all creating that electrical field that you're talking about. It's amazing because, like you said, if you walk into a room with a bunch of people who are pissed off and angry, you can feel that. And I wonder if it's coming from that or from other sources.
Yeah, it's a lot of sources, but at the end of the day, we have enough data to know that the body is an electrical thing. So it's going to interact with all humans. That's why we are really all one. There is no way for somebody to be suffering on one side of the earth, and you as a human being will not feel it on this side of the earth.
Oh, wow.
We're also in that way one with the electromagnetic field of the earth. If you remove that field from the human body, the humans don't live. They found that out when they were putting those rockets into space. You had to put a
Yep.
Schumann generator around the rocket in order for the human body to be okay. So it's a real thing. And I think it's really powerful because it's not that hard for us to convert our emotions. I call it flipping the switch. It's not about how many hurricanes and how much chaos comes our way, which is what we're seeing in the world right now. It's the opportunity that we got from the challenge to respond to that hurricane in a certain way. So it's
Yeah.
how we respond that has the effect on the body
We're
and
with
other human beings.
We're with Dr. Sangeeta Pati. Her website is sajune, sajune.com, and this is episode 639. If you guys are listening in the chat room and have any questions for her, we're going to get to the children aspect in just a second. But if you have any questions for her, just type them in all caps so that I can sort of see them and not miss them in the chat room there because it goes kind of quick. So getting kind of going back. Oh, by the way, too, guys, if you want to call in and ask a question, I know that not many people do that, but our Skype handle is Extreme Health Radio, and we'll take questions after the first break, and then we'll do our best to answer those. But Dr. Pati, so moving on to children, we're kind of just barely talk about this before we started the show, but as you can see with childhood diseases these days, like children are sicker than ever. This culture, this time in life, it's amazing how broken down our children are, it seems like, from generations past.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Um, I started as an OBGYN, of course, seeing women above the age of 45 mostly who
Uh-huh.
were looking to have, optimal health. And slowly that expanded to men.
Mm-hmm.
What I noticed over the last 10 years is that more and more families are needing and wanting to bring their children in because the children are sick. The children are being diagnosed with things that we really didn't see in our generations. And if you talk to a school teacher, what you find is that up to a third and growing of the class population is on medications that have to be managed either by the nurse or the teacher. And generally, those medications are for things like focus, anxiety, depression, and a host of other things. But I would say that those are the top.
Wow. So what did you say? A third of what is medications?
About a third of children in grade school
Oh
are
man.
on medications.
Oh my
And you
gosh.
talk to teachers. I have a lot of teachers as patients, and then I started looking it up, and I was like, why are all
Yeah.
these children coming in? Am I just seeing them, or is it something that is really national and global? And
Uh-huh.
it absolutely is national and global. There's
That's
no
so
question about it.
that's so
So
crazy. So a third of kids are on some sort of pharmaceutical drug, and you say most of it is for like ADD and focus and things.
focus, anxiety, and depression. Those are the big ones. And you'll even see, for example, a new fad in college. The
Uh-huh.
college kids will come in asking for a prescription of Adderall simply because the kids who are on Adderall are scoring better scores because they're not able to keep their focus.
Oh.
And the parents who come here, instead of letting their kids go to the school, person where they'll probably get the prescription, they're like, "Oh no, you're coming in to see,
Right.
Dr. Patty, and let's see if we can figure out some other solution." Because it's more important to find out why. They're already programmed that way from having come here. And that's what I was kind of saying in the beginning of the show. It's like the fact that our health is falling apart. We spend more than any country in the world. And the last time I looked, in terms of our health status, we are ranking 36.
Yeah, yeah.
So that being said, everybody's dealing with people who are ill. If you look every morning, people are dealing with, oh, this one has that one has that. People are putting fires out in their house every day. So I feel it's a good thing because it's forcing us as a population to really look hard at not only our own choices, but also to get more involved in the public health scene, because we have to voice loudly in order to protect the planet and the people.
I agree. I agree. It's interesting when you look at schools in there and what you have going on there. Everything from, I guess, Wi-Fi, dirty electricity, chemicals on the carpet inside the classrooms, a lack of being able to spend more time outside. You have computer screens now with the blue light, and then you have chemicals in the grass, the glyphosates that are sprayed on the playgrounds, and all of that. And school lunches are another issue too, with all the chemicals from those. And then on top of that, the children that enter that environment, like you said, one out of every three has some sort of medication they're taking, and it's showing, isn't it?
It is showing. It's showing because they start with those medications. I mean, nobody has an Adderall deficiency. Nobody
Right.
has a Wellbutrin deficiency or a Xanax deficiency. The minute you pick up your pen to write that kind of a prescription, you should be asking yourself, why is this person having depression? And usually the answers are rather straightforward. They're not confusing, they're not mysteries, they're very basic.
hmm And you help kids all the time, right? Coming in to see you.
Yes, we have a growing population of especially children between the age of 13, 14, and 25. So, right in those 10 years from teenager to college is where the practice is growing the most. We do have children under that age.
Uh-huh.
And what we're finding is that a lot of families that come in, when they're oriented this way, they truly realize that it's important for them to facilitate their children to be in the driver's seat for their own health because of what's going on. The
Mm-hmm.
USDA has reported, if you look at their last report, a 60% reduction in the nutrition. You have to eat many apples today to get the same
Oh,
nutrition you would have gotten from one apple 50 years ago.
wow.
So, do you get scared? Like you mentioned a lot of things. There's 100,000 man-made toxins that have been released by us, and the human body has to handle them.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do about this? We take our power back. We
Mm.
become aware. We avoid the things that are in the list that we know cause problems. We become involved in public health policy and public health awareness and do things like you're doing, which is getting the word out on a multiple levels. So
Mm-hmm.
I see the it's not that a lot of these things weren't happening before. I feel what's happening now is because we have the public venues, the internet, the social media, and things like that, people are learning more about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that awareness is creating a power. It'll lead to power. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
come from fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's really transformative
Mm-hmm.
that we're getting the word out.
Yeah, no, it's super, super good. And I think that it's so important for all of us to understand that there are, natural ways to deal with some of these things. And, what I find is really interesting is my wife's sister has two kids, and one of them has always been very sickly, and she's had her bowels collapse. I think she's like 5 years old. She's already been through 2 surgeries. She's been on
Ah,
multiple rounds of antibiotics. And, you know, I think the interesting thing about this kind of thing is like she's always getting sick, and it seems to me that she's probably the norm of kids out there. And what's a little bit scary to me is that the parents of these kids don't think that that's abnormal. Like even my parents-in-law, they think it's normal, it's no big deal, and this is just things that happen to children. But that's not normal. It's just not.
it wasn't normal. It is the new normal, maybe.
Yeah.
And certainly as we travel into what I call the ancient future, it will change.
I like that. The ancient future. That's a good name for that.
Yes, the ancient future. It's when we, as a human race, exercise our wisdom that we have and protect the humanity. It's about the environment. It's about what we're putting into the water. It's about, you know, being front and center. I usually call modern civilization our greatest disease because the pace at which we expect to live our lives is a pace that is not consistent with the fuel in the fuel tank.
Yeah. It's
And
so
it's the norm.
it's crazy. I was reading something recently. I don't know if there's a way to quantify this. I forget who was saying this, but basically he was saying that we have the modern culture, we have more stress in one day than people that lived in the 1700s had in their whole life. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds pretty true to me.
Yeah. Especially if you understand that stressors are not necessarily just the conscious ones, like, oh, there's going to be an earthquake, or there's going to be a hurricane, or this child is having that, or
Hmm.
that isn't the only thing. There happens to be um, the human receptors detect chaos.
Hmm.
So, as I was saying, when you have chaos on one side of the planet or human beings that are suffering somewhere, we're not able to separate ourselves from it, whether we know about it consciously or not.
Hmm.
Our vibration is connected energetically to everything on this planet, every animal, every tree. Um, the Heart Math Institute has actually done some very good studies about how the heart rate variability of humans affects trees and vice versa, and how they communicate for 300 miles out. The system is, you know, much more elaborate, and we're of course indoctrinated at a very early age into how this works. So we have a little bit of a limit that's been set by the way that we've been taught, and we're
Hmm.
learning to push that out because it's just not accurate.
Yeah, that's fascinating that you said that because I've heard that for years, but it's interesting that I don't know, at least here in the US, there seems to be so much going on politically and a lot of sort of strife between people. And I'm thinking to myself now that maybe that's just reflecting in the general populace. People are starting to feel more stressed, more fearful, maybe more
Mm.
disconnected from their fellow man and arguing about politics. It just seems like it's
Yes,
such a heightened state right now.
it is. And it's easy to look at that heightened state and feel a little discouraged. Uh, I I look at it as a really positive thing because this is a transformative point for the human race. If we were in a quiet state, unaware of the things that are going on, we're just in a quiet state. But this is an opportunity for the human race to literally like rise up and do the right things. And that is what is exactly going to happen. And I feel extremely confident about that. If you look at the number of young people that are taking a front and center stand in public health and various other things,
Hmm.
um, I I get a chance to counsel a lot of young people who are disheartened by what's going on the planet, and I always remind them. I say, your generation is here to facilitate the growth through this phase, a growth where we will utilize the wisdom. You can call it ancient wisdom,
Hmm.
but it's more just common sense. It's
Hmm.
common sense. Don't dump plastic into the ocean. Don't put fluoride in your water. Did
Right.
nature give it to you that way? No. Then
Yeah, it's so true. I kind of think the same way with our kids. We have one or no, 18-month-old twin boys, and it's so
wow.
much fun. But I think about it in that respect, like we're raising them to be conscious, open, aware people who are here to help facilitate change in the world. And not
Yes.
that we're great for thinking that way, but if everyone sort of thought like that, instead of just raising, having children just to have children,
Mhm.
actually raise them with this idea that there's big things that need to be done in this world, and there's a reason why you exist, and kind of taking it a little bit deeper, I think is really important.
Yes. Yes. And it starts with, of course, setting that example for ourselves. We need to get uh, back to the earth, hands in the soil, feet in the ground,
Hmm.
naked in the sun,
I like it.
uh, connect to structured water. You were
Uh,
talking about Gerard Pollack. I don't know if you've ever seen some of the images of structure of the water that Masaru Emoto, who was a scientist in Japan, took many years ago and was able to show that the difference between me being in a loving place and sending out a positive, loving, healing energy on that water crystal when it's photographed, it's astounding what it
wow.
looks like when you're in a place of anger. So when you start to look at that, you note that if my body is 70% water and my emotions can change the structure of water like that, then you have to realize that your DNA is eavesdropping on your thoughts and your feelings. So you get to choose different, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like that your DNA is eavesdropping on your thoughts and feelings. That's so true.
Well, it was such a great freedom to mankind when we discovered that our genes are less than 10% of the picture. It's whether they're turned on and off that matters.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, if you look at 100 breast cancers, less than 10 of them will be genetic. So 90% is turned on and off by the milieu, the
Hmm.
water, the oxygen, the joy, the fuel tank, the nutrition, the adrenal thyroid balance. So you have a lot of control. So we're not a victim of our genes anymore.
Yeah, and it's
And I think
interesting.
water is like up there for me. Water is, if you heal the water of the world, humanity will heal because all of our memories and our emotions and our history is carried in that.
It's so interesting. Well, I hope you guys are enjoying the show. We're with Dr. Sangeeta Pati. Her website is sajune.com. We're going to take a little break right now. If you have any questions for her, type them in all caps in the chat room, and I'll do my best to make sure I see those when we come back from the break. And also, when we come back, too, you can call on Skype at Extreme Health Radio is our little handle there on Skype. So pass the show on to your friends if you guys are interested. Share it with people you know that may be interested in this kind of information. We'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to Extreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging at Extreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
So we're trying to do some more things on Instagram and love to connect with you on there at Extreme Health Radio. So if you want to join us and follow along with our little family and what we do on a daily basis and all that kind of fun stuff, I figure as long as we have an Instagram account and they allow us to use that platform, we might as well use it to the best of our abilities. So if you want to follow us and tag us, that would be awesome. And I wanted to share with you a really cool product that I love, love, love. It's called Colostrum, and this stuff is absolutely incredible, and we use it just about every day. In fact, we ran out recently, so we have to buy more. But this stuff is amazing. Listen to what Daniel Vitalis has to say about colostrum and your gut health.
So colostrum is the first food that all baby mammals receive, or all baby mammals, natural baby mammals receive. So when we were born, our mother's breasts were initially filled with colostrum before actually there was any milk available to us. And in an ideal circumstance, that's the first thing we drink. Well, the same is true for all mammals, and it's especially true for cows. One of the interesting things about bovine colostrum, cow colostrum, is that it has a really unique impact on human health. This has been studied for a really long time. There are literally thousands of studies in the scientific literature showing the effects of bovine colostrum on human health, on human immunity, on restoring the gut lumen, the gut tract, repairing damage to the gut, and helping to restore health after things like IBS or Crohn's or diverticulitis or any of the sort of inflammatory bowel diseases. And it does this through a number of actions, but primarily through the fact that it contains all of the known mammalian growth factors. And these proteins that we call growth factors initiate growth in tissue throughout the body. And each type of tissue in our body has a specific growth factor. Well, they're all found in colostrum.
Yeah, guys, I'm telling you, colostrum is one of the kind of staples of my diet. And I absolutely just love this stuff. And it's great for, like Daniel was saying, with restoring the integrity of the gut lumen, as he calls it. And it's really great for modulating and regulating your immune system. It's got amazing properties and qualities to it. So you can use this. I was just looking down on what I was scrolling down, and I forgot. I didn't know that he uses it to make pancakes. So I've never done that before, but we use it in so many different ways. And if you guys are interested, it's available at biocharge.me, which is our store for this radio show. If you want to support the work that we do, you can go there and purchase any of the products we have there. And then also I wanted to tell you guys about this cool product, which is our RelaxFar infrared sauna. Sauna therapy is just incredible. It's been used and utilized for thousands of years. It's really great for helping to, one of the ways is it helps to oscillate your fat tissues. And when that happens, toxins and chemicals that are stored in your fat actually come out, and you sweat them out of your skin. And it's just an incredible thing to do as far as your own health is concerned. And listen to what Dr. Thomas Levy has to say about that. I think you guys were just talking about sweating, right? Mm-hmm. And detoxification. So that's going to be huge for people.
No, it's as long as you make sure you get plenty of the good minerals, man, having a regular sweat in a far infrared sauna is one of your best health practices you can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you get rid of a wide array of toxins. I mean, you get rid of mercury, you get rid of iron. They would have you believe you can't get rid of iron, but a lot of the older clinicians called the skin the third kidney.
Skin is the third kidney. And getting rid of iron is pretty beneficial from the work that I've been looking into with Morley Robbins lately. And listen to what our biological dentist, Dr. Stuart Nunley, has to say about this.
You know what I chose to do? I chose to go very, very slow as I detox. So one of the things that I did is I invested in an infrared sauna, which was huge. That was a big, big part of my healing because, interestingly enough, many times patients who have heavy metal toxicity lose the ability to sweat. And so I was one of those. I could not break a sweat. And the infrared sauna helped me to retrain my body to be able to sweat. It was a huge part of my overall detox.
Doesn't Dr. Huggins say, as long as there's more going out than what's coming in, you're okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right on that.
Dr. Hal Huggins is an awesome guy. Rest in peace, Dr. Huggins. And I think that you seriously consider getting one of these saunas. I think it would be one of the best things you could do to sort of bring these healing tools into your home and turn your home into a sanctuary of healing, a place where you don't have to go out and get in a car and drive and go to a sauna. You can just do this right in your home. And I'm just a big fan of these things, and I use mine about 3 days a week now. With twins, it's a little hard. So it's a little challenging with twins to be able to use my sauna 5-6 days a week like I used to. But there's some incredible benefits with heat shock proteins and the 40% decrease in all-cause mortality, according to Dr. Rhonda Patrick. A 40% decrease in all-cause mortality. It's just crazy. So sauna therapy is really, really great. And it's available at biocharge.me. And I'll also make them available if you want to check out the show links for this show, which is extremehealthradio.com/639. And when we come back from this little segment here, I'm going to ask Dr. Pati about these things, as well as some other questions that you may have. So we'll be right back.
This is Extreme Health Radio, where we're 100% listener supported. Make sure to join the Extreme Health Academy with thousands of other listeners and get real solutions for your health challenges.
Yeah, my friends, if you want to join us, go a little bit deeper into your health and get access to all of these courses and the health database and the community forums and everything like that with thousands of other people. Come join us and let us know that you want to come and join. And there's a free 14-day trial, and you can check it out at extremehealthacademy.com. And let me bring Dr. Pati up here really quick, and let me turn her microphone on. So Dr. Pati, it's interesting that you were saying before the show, or I think during the show, we have 100,000 chemicals that are in our environment. Is that right?
Man-made chemicals, yes.
Jeez.
We have added 100,000 man-made chemicals to our environment. And even something like our water filtration system, it turns out that it is not very effective in removing the metabolites from pharmacy. So
Wow.
all the people who are on medications and that water that is going into the natural water sources and we're filtering, it's very difficult to filter that out. So when you start to measure, we're finding all of that. So we can't escape it. It's in the air, the water, the earth, and then of course, then in any living creature.
Yeah, I was just reading something recently. 24,000 chemicals are in, according to the Environmental Working Group, 24,000 chemicals are in our drinking water here locally. I mean, that's just 24,000 too many.
Yes. It should be H2O, right?
I know. You would think, right? You would hope. But yeah, apparently not. I'm sure you use a water filtration system there?
Yes, I use a what's known as an echo water filtration system, which is a molecular hydrogen system.
Oh.
And I think that it's, if I really had to choose and say what I think is the best water, I would say that it's the water that's collected closest to the source
Okay.
and not necessarily processed by a filter and a machine. So go back to the concept that we're looking for how the long living survived. The long living are long living. They're drinking water that's colloidal and mineralized coming down a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for example, if you look at the United States, I am very aware of an area in the Ozarks where the Mountain Valley spring water comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And they package it in glass bottles. and it's from the source. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the only way, but it is source related water that I would think is actually as structured and natural as it can be. Now, obviously, there's many devices that can use to get close, but even in filtration systems, if you want to have structured water, at least the systems I've seen, you have to put it into, say, a vitalizer. Have you ever seen those? They're like these things that spin the water for about 20 minutes and put the structure back into it. Some of these water filtration systems actually have geometries and frequencies that are in the system. I know the Echo water system does have that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. John Apsley, by any chance?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. He talks a lot about that same sort of thing, like that structured spring water and making sure that that water we bring in is structured and, is easily absorbed into our tissues and things. And yeah, it's so fascinating, isn't it? The more you study, the more complex it becomes,
Yes, yeah. Dr. John Apsley is actually a person who has a lot of information about this, and we work very closely together, and he's actually my partner in life, so I know him very well.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. How
Yes.
cool. How cool. That's so
Yes.
great. Wow. Yeah. So we have a lot of questions coming in from YouTube right now. And I think what we should probably do is we were supposed to talk about restoring optimal health to children. So let's dive into that a little bit. I know we're a little late getting into the children's aspect, but I could talk with you all day. So it's too fun to just kind of go in something structured. But let's talk a little bit about that. How can we restore children's health? I'm sure it's a multifaceted and multi-pronged approach.
Yes, it is multi-pronged, and yet it is common sense and very similar to restoring health in anybody. So what we're looking to do, first of all, is optimize the parents. And it turns out that many people actually come to us before they're even pregnant. And when I say optimize, we're optimizing in 5 areas. And let me see, I actually might have a diagram of this.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if this is, you can't really, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh,
Can
I
you see that
can.
pretty
I
well?
can. Yeah. Do you
Okay.
have a picture of that on your website? I could bring it up there too.
It could be on the website.
Oh, I like that. Okay. For
But
those,
the concept, yes.
sorry. For those that are listening on the radio or on podcast, let me just read these. These are a multifaceted approach: body, oxygenation, natural hormones, nutrition, detoxification, and mind with conscious and the subconscious mind, just for those that are listening on audio.
Exactly. And so what was, and there's no rocket science. These are simple things. And what we have found over the last 15 years is that if you optimize these 5 areas to the 75th percentile, not to the normal range. The normal range is between the 10th percentile and the 90th percentile.
Okay.
It identifies disease very well. A perfect example would be vitamin D. Vitamin D between 30 and 100 is a normal range. But if you get it above 70, you're going to drop strokes, heart attacks, and cancers by about 50%. You're going to enhance the function of the thyroid about 30 to 50% because vitamin D is actually required to carry T3, which is the active thyroid molecule, into the cell. So that's the difference between being in the normal range and the optimal range. And if you measure categorically each one of these 5 areas, the fuel tank, hormones and nutrition, detoxification and pH, right? Mostly controlled by drinking 100 ounces of structured water with pink salt and lemon and maintaining a pH in the morning above 6.7 in the urine.
Okay.
The state of the stress of the mind, which is really the stress of the heart. If you look, 90% is the emotions that we're carrying in the heart, which we also call the subconscious. But you can maintain it by just correcting the heart rate variability we were talking about. And then the oxygenation. So those 5 areas, one tries to optimize in both a man and a woman before conception. And I can give you case after case after case where the outcomes for these women have been so much better. Healthy babies, not what you were mentioning where somebody's getting sick all the time. And it's really a stark contrast. My daughter just made me a grandmother about 6 months ago.
Oh,
And
cool.
my daughter follows a very healthy regimen. And at the same time as she was pregnant, we got an opportunity to see, other people out there and became more aware of other people that are pregnant and having babies. And I've noticed a definite difference between what her baby is experiencing, which is we haven't had any illness at all, even though the baby's only 6 months. But usually you're starting to see things in children.
Yeah.
So the healthy mother and father are the beginning. And by healthy, it doesn't just mean controlling those 5 areas. It means that we have to have a balanced view of what life is. We really, truly have to connect back to nature because that is from where everything is healthy. Otherwise, we're always going to be chasing, for example, the sauna thing that you showed. In our modern civilization, we don't really have an option. If we want to get rid of toxins, we have to sit in that thing, right? It's true. It's an amazing, amazing methodology of getting the toxins out of the body. So getting as close to nature and then utilizing these kind of things, the parents have to be healthy. And then it comes to the children. There is humongous difference between women who deliver by vaginal delivery and use no anesthetics and are supported to deliver in the natural way versus having a C-section. There's a difference. There's a huge part of the microbiome which is passed on through the vaginal canal that babies don't get. And generally, the C-section babies are going to struggle a little bit more. That doesn't mean that we won't have C-sections. I'm an OBGYN. I did a lot of C-sections. But I didn't realize that if I had colonized the baby with the vaginal microbiome at the time I did the C-section, which is data that has come out after that, I would have improved the chance that the baby wouldn't have any issues in the intestines and the immune system. Breastfeeding versus not breastfeeding. And obviously, it's not easy, but we should know that the natural methods actually protect us.
That's so interesting. Yeah, so when the baby doesn't get to go through the vaginal birth canal, it's losing a certain, I think it was Lactobacillus plantarum. Is that one of the main ones that it doesn't get?
That's one of them, but there's, we're really in our infancy of realizing that it's all of them.
Interesting, yeah.
You need everything. There's about, altogether, between skin contact, breast milk, and vaginal delivery, there's about 700 to 900 known species that are transmitted to a baby. About a third. It's a little bit more heavily weighted on the breast feeding than it is on the root. But it's unbelievable. Like it's literally like hundreds of species that are transmitted and that make the whole picture, the whole microbiome, right?
Yeah, it's so fascinating how much goes into this. So with a child, let's speak to the mothers and maybe fathers that have already had children and maybe they're 6 months old, a year old, 2 years old. What are some things that we can do, assuming obviously we're past the point of preconception and birth and that, to help support the health of a little guy, a little girl?
Yeah. So I always, we started this conversation talking about how our field affects everything around us, right? And the most important thing that is going to affect a little person, especially because at a subconscious level, they're completely aware of everything, every heartbeat, every heart rate variability change. Having a life that is balanced, a family life that's balanced and connected is at the top.
Okay.
Spending time in nature and absorbing those 5 things we talked about. You know, the 5-point model I was showing you with the hormones, nutrition, toxins, mind, and body? I like to think about them when I think of the long living, because you really think the long living takes supplements or, do any of these other things, get a water filter, sit in a sauna thing.
Right.
If you think about it, what am I talking about is for the hormones is sun, sun, sun. The circadian rhythm is set completely in every cell by us being in sync with sunrise and sunset. Then we've got the connection to the earth. So take the baby, take the children, get them naked, get them connected to the soil and earth, outdoors, outside of the 5G and the Wi-Fi, because the nature has the ability to actually correct these things. The third one, making sure that we're drinking practically at least filtered water, right?
Right.
And storing it in glass. Okay. Those are 2 highlights. Making sure that you're not demineralizing. If the water is becoming demineralized, like a reverse osmosis system, you want to make sure that you add back with pink salt and lemon. Or drink coconut water. You need to drink and enough, and that needs to be something that the whole family does. If you look at the thirst response in the United States, it's much lower of a thirst response than what you actually need to keep us healthy and alive.
That's interesting.
So and under stress, the adrenal gland knocks out the normal mechanism by which the body would store more minerals. So if you're under a lot of stress, you're actually losing more fluid and more minerals. And that stress is felt by the children also. So I know you're asking about the children. It's an environment that we're setting up here, right? Eat organic. Under the toxicity area, pesticides and fertilizers, we're only going to find more and more and more that cause disease, more than just glyphosates. It's going to be all of them. None of them belong in the human body. So eating organic, and more importantly, I believe that we have to involve ourselves in actually growing food, getting our hands into that soil around that seed. When we touch a seed, our genetics is programming that seed. That's epigenetics. You plant it, you're planting it with that seed already has the knowledge of you in it, right? So we have to get back to the earth. So getting the children involved in natural things and doing a lot of things outdoors in natural environments without cell phones. If you look at a park these days, you look at people going to the park. It's funny. If you took the cell phones out of their hands, everybody would be just walking around like this, because that's the prevalent, human condition right now.
Right.
But we have to become aware. And when we become aware of it, we can steer our children away from it. So the use of electronics is, in my opinion, one of the most detrimental things that can happen to a child's brain.
Yeah.
And they're starting to find a lot of studies about this. So these are common sense things. Teaching children how to meditate and breathe and how to flip that switch. I was talking about heart rate variability. I may be able to show it to you. Actually, I got I actually have, I wonder how close I could get this image. Let's see. Wait. Okay. Wait a minute.
Okay,
I'm not in the right spot.
There you go.
Can you kind of see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. Perfect.
So that top heart rate variability
Okay.
is what we call an incoherent heart rate variability,
Okay.
which a lot of people might not know about. It's easily measurable by an app that is available from HeartMath. And what we want to do is flip the switch to the lower one. And in the lower one, you're actually reducing the amount of fuel, the amount of nutrition you're using, you're improving the immune system, you're correcting the intestines, because remember, 70% of the nervous system lies in the gut. That's why the top pattern is transmitted directly to the gut. So if you have anxiety, you're going to have gut issues. The cool thing about that we always knew that meditation of 60 to 90 minutes could actually achieve this.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know now is that you can flip that switch in 60 seconds if you do the exercise from your heart. It's really about putting ourselves into a virtual reality where we are creating a moment of joy. Like it could be that you're recreating a moment on the beach, and breathing in and out of your heart. So, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What are the colors in the air? What does it smell like? When you recreate that, the heart automatically goes into a coherent state. So you can do that anywhere. You can do that on your bathroom, in your bathroom. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of, and that effect lasts for hours. Once they actually proved that stuff, they were able to actually show that even students' performance improved. In Florida now, there's one college where it's required. The performance improves by almost 30%. So everybody should learn that. That's not a 90-minute meditation. That's a 60-second activity that all children should learn. And then learning how to breathe, the body oxygenation. We don't breathe. And we don't breathe into our bellies. So this is, an opportunity. I say, if you look at the clock every hour on the hour, on the hour, do a couple of conscious breaths. Inhale, 4, hold, 4, exhale, 4, hold, 4. Just something simple like that. Do 3 of those. That is one way. Now, we also, when we have advanced disease, like when we have cancers, or a great example is I just treated a 15-year-old child who had trauma at birth, from another country, actually not from here, who ended up coming to us for recuperating the brain activity because the trauma at birth created years and years of low oxygen state and brain activity. And for somebody like that, we were not going to utilize just teaching to breathe, because of course we taught life breath and things like that, but we had to get out the oxygen concentrators and other things like that because we want to regenerate. So oxygen concentrator is 100% oxygen instead of 21%, and breathing it at 25 liters. And what kind of changes we saw? Basically, basic neurological improvement across the board within 4 to 5 weeks. So that's the 5-point model.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. It's interesting what you're saying about. Oh no, I was just going to say it's interesting what you're saying about the getting children's hands in the dirt, and getting them connected to the soil. And I remember reading years ago, and I think one of the Anastasia books where she's talking about putting saliva on your seed. And then that effectively allows that to dry, and the DNA and the genetics of your own saliva go into the seed, and then the seed goes into the soil, and it actually pulls up the nutrients that you need. I mean, that's just crazy, but it's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned the book Anastasia, and if you tell anybody that that's your source of scientific information, they would probably wonder. But it just turns out that if you read those books, you realize that there's an innate natural wisdom that we all have. It's just wiped out by thinking that you have to have a randomized trial. Your randomized trial will have no ability to measure the belief system of the patient, the subconscious belief system.
What do you
think? It will have no ability to measure the bioenergetics. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask you, when it comes to fat, we've been sold a sort of a bill of goods in this culture. I think people are starting to come out of that now, hopefully with shows like this and more people like you talking about this. But I don't know if the average person still thinks that fat is unhealthy. But when it comes to feeding children good, healthy fats, I'm sure that has to be on the list as well, right? To make sure they got the cholesterol.
100.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. So I didn't, in the 5-point model, when you were asking me about children, I've gone through detoxification, heart, mind, stress, and physical body oxygenation. I haven't mentioned the hormones and nutrition yet. In the nutritional category, there are 3 areas that you focus on. One is most of your nutrition needs to come from really food. That should be the highlight. Nature packaged food in a way that we just can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you might need supplements because of the way the soil is. But then again, if you know the farmer who grow your food or you grow it yourself, you're going to have more nutritious food. There's very good studies showing that organic food is 30 to 40% higher in minerals and vitamins. And then you've got measurement. There happens to be a test called SpectraCell that it's a blood test. Most insurances cover it. And you can actually know exactly where your B1, B2, B3, B4. We actually run this test on children because it gives us an idea of, do they really need a vitamin or not? If you wanted to choose standard things to supplement, um, you cannot do better than using colostrum, just like you mentioned earlier in the show, and omega and minerals. We use a lot of pink salt. We use a lot of DHA, omega-3 fatty acids. And I'm talking about supplements. Obviously, the highlight of our program, for example, in the 15-year-old that I mentioned to you, was to make sure that the fat, not only are there good, healthy fats, but they're packaged in the way that nature meant them to be packaged. Like an avocado is an avocado, right?
Mm.
It's packaged with it's supposed, what you're supposed to have in it.
Mm-hmm.
An orange carries vitamin C with all the bioflavonoids that are necessary. Man
Mm-hmm.
cannot possibly mimic that by a vitamin tablet for vitamin
Yeah.
C.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we want to do, right? Is make everything super simple. And there's a place I think for context and your, life and how stressful of a life you have. But I think the majority of what you're saying is getting all this stuff from food. The question becomes with NPK fertilizer and acid rain and all this kind of stuff happening in our environment.
Right.
Even if you grow
Right.
organic just means less pesticides or no pesticides.
Exactly.
But how do we get all this stuff from food, from an environment, do you think, that's not, I guess, optimal?
Yeah, that's important. So organic means less pesticides and fertilizers, but it just turns out there actually have been some side-by-side studies to show that when you have less fertilizers and pesticides, you have an increase in the nutritional content of the food. If you knew the farmer and you know that you're replenishing the soil the way it should be replenished and loved, our earth, right? Humanity's dependent on soil. I don't know who said it, but something about when you kill the soil of the nation, you kill the people who live on it,
Right.
when you destroy the soil. So it is not really that easy to correct everything only using food. And although I'm saying that the highlight should be food, it cannot be the mainstay. We usually use a probiotic and or sometimes we use yogurt, which is coconut milk yogurt, kashaya, and we use these in the children, omegas and pink salt. These are the highlights of what we use as supplement, and colostrum. Those are, I would say, 4 top supplements, and sometimes vitamin D. So, of course, right now with the soil the way it is, you have to use that. The last piece is the hormones. And you might be asking, well, why do you have to look at hormones in children? And it just turns out that because of the level of chronic stress response that's happening in children, and the amount of anxiety is a huge symptom that we're seeing in children. It's extremely important to actually correct the adrenal thyroid pathway, even if you don't correct it with hormones. You can correct it with homeopathics. You can correct it with behavioral changes. You can boost up the nutrition, but you have to address optimizing the adrenal thyroid axis.
I was just looking at your website for those that are watching on YouTube. If you're watching or listening on a podcast, I was just bringing up Dr. Pati's website, and I was showing some of the different services they have, and I noticed that it says here, let's see, one of them is EMF and EMR protection, which is really interesting to me because that sort of gets into sort of facilitating an environment for your kids to be able to be shielded from all this 5G kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because of the 5G, our stance on it has shifted slightly because the things we used to use, we knew they worked because we used to do electrical testing to make sure they worked. As 5G has come out, we've been shifting a little, and there's a company called Defender Shield, which we've been using, which is based out in Tampa, because their equipment and the protective devices they have are tested for 5G. So they're definitely, helpful in that way. But between the 5G, the other thing that parents have to make sure is to get rid of the smart meters. Complain. Many cities now, if you ask and complain about the smart meters, they'll come and take them out. They have to take them out if it's affecting your health. So, and I know when a smart meter went into my house, I didn't realize what had happened. I started feeling really ill, and I had a bioenergetic worker come in and test me around the smart meter, and it absolutely was the smart meter. So, the way I'm still battling to try to get that thing removed. But in the meantime, I've been able to neutralize it by putting volcanic ash around it. It's called Dragonite. It comes from a company called Premier Research Lab. And I've also know that if you put layers and layers of aluminum on the inside part of the home, where the smart meter's on the outside, you will be protected from that. Because, smart meters are sending 8 signals per minute to the base. So you're getting a lot of exposure. So it's a matter of getting knowledgeable and figuring out how to protect yourself.
Yeah, because you're looking at like such a crazy change in our environment. And like I've been doing some research, and like since 1879, when the invention of sort of electricity and non-native EMF and all this blue light and electricity and stuff, coming into our homes is so dramatic. It has an effect on our blood sugar levels, according to Magda Havas. She's been on our show talking about the dirty electricity in the wall. And my goodness, like we're bathing in these we're living in these electrified cages, but we don't think of them like that because we can't really feel it that much. Most people can't,
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, building an environment for your child, I would imagine would be super beneficial where they sleep maybe and spend the majority of their time, making sure that you mitigate that to some degree, considering whether or not you live next door to a Wi-Fi tower or a 5G tower. There's a website called antennasearch.com, and you can look at that. And it seems like every time I look at it, the numbers just keep rising. There's more and more towers. It's just everywhere. It's crazy.
It's like peppered all over the map.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, so you do some of these things in your own home to be able to mitigate with the tinfoil. Yeah.
Yep. I've over the years, between putting magnetite and sinking basalt 2 feet all the way around the house. We've also done it with our office. The only new challenge we have now, of course, is the 5G and the smart meters. So we just have to be ahead of the curve and be aware and complain.
Yeah, I hear you on that. There's a guy by the name of Dave Stetzer. You're probably familiar with him, and he does a lot of work
I'm not.
Yeah, he does a lot of work with, I think he was a former electrician, and he talks about this dirty electricity and all this kind of stuff. And what he was saying that it's easier for the body to discharge than it is to sort of prevent these frequencies from hitting the body. And so as an electrician, he was saying to stand on tinfoil for 30 seconds before you go to bed, and that discharge of those electrons will discharge from your body before you go to bed at night. And so we've been doing this ourselves along with our little babies. We like put the little piece of tinfoil right on the bottom of their feet. I don't know if it's working, but
so cute. How old are they?
They're a year and a half. So
Oh my gosh.
it's so
God
fun.
bless you.
Uh,
It turns out, well, I'm not familiar with the tinfoil thing, but I do use the earthing mats. You can
uh-huh.
get them for the bed and plug them into the ground socket of your wall. So it's like sleeping on the ground.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think it really has the same effect as if you were just sleeping on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, so do you want to take a couple questions from the chat room and kind of go rapid fire?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
That'd be great.
let's do that. Let's do that. All right, guys. So we've been kind of teasing the question thing. So I'm going to go through and grab some starting from the beginning. Here's one. Do you think there's an optimal diet for people, or optimal diet for each person is different? Erratic classifications of air, fire, water elementals. I'm not sure, but do you think there's an optimal diet for everybody?
I think that the diet issue is a mess. Because if you look, there's like thousands of books on what's the optimal diet.
Right.
And I find that there's some basic principles. And one of the top ones is eat real food. Eat real food. And the second one would be that it should be 50% of the plate should be vegetables.
I like it.
And lean protein should be a quarter of the plate, and good fats. And they should be real food. They should not be, when you're shopping in the grocery store, avoid the middle. Go around the outside and get all the fresh things. And,
Right.
or if you're at the best way is to shop in a farmer's market and actually know your farmer. So that would be the principles, and drink enough water, because most of our hunger is actually thirst.
Interesting. Okay, good stuff. All right, next question, Big Fat Mama. Does she know of any light or sound frequency for optimal healing at the different chakras for sleeping? She uses the I've never heard of this, SOFFEGIO, Solfeggio frequencies for sleeping.
Solfeggio frequencies, right?
Yeah, yeah. Do you know if those are bogus, she says, or do you know of any specific frequencies for sleeping?
I really can't speak with any knowledge about it. I'm very aware of the solfeggio frequencies. I have the geometries myself. But when you talk about like what effect it actually has, you can only talk about the wisdom that you have from things you've seen or been told. I'm unable to figure out if using the solfeggio frequencies actually does anything.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely a fan of us. You see, if you look, the frequency of the earth, if you look at the Schumann waves, is about 7.83 hertz, and that corresponds with our frequency of brain heart. So to me, that's one of the healing frequencies, right? The multiples of 9, 432. Okay. You might know that most of our music and our sound was at 432, but at some point it changed to 440. 440 disrupts the human body. 432 enhances the human body. And if you look on YouTube, you'll find lots of apps where people are taking the 440 music and converting it before they're putting it on their amplifiers and listening to it. Now, I don't know whether that actually does the trick or not, but this is not unknown stuff. The geometry of life, what we call, some people call it sacred geometry, but honestly, it's universal geometry. Everything is based around the geometry that the atoms and the electrons circulate on. So we know that it's a basic geometry that goes all through the universe. And anytime we do anything to disrupt it, we cannot be in a good place of health. And anytime we come back to it, we can. So if we are picking frequencies in the way that maybe this question is asking, I would just say that go to the natural frequencies
I like
of
that.
the earth and the body.
Good stuff. What are your favorite tactics for chemical and heavy metal detox strategies? That's a good one. That's a good one.
It's a very good one. And the first strategy is to become very aware of where you're getting heavy metals from, right? If you are eating fish and you're eating big fish, you're getting heavy metals from there, or maybe from mercury amalgams, or maybe from a variety of other sources. So knowing your sources and reducing those is number one. The second is I really started in the practice with chelation for this answer, and
Okay.
I found it to be really uh, not practical at all. The amount of cost and the number of treatments people have to do to have chelation therapy, I feel it's unreasonable, and most
Mm-hmm.
people cannot complete 30, treatments like that. So I started using oral mechanisms a while ago, and there's two oral mechanisms I like. One of them is to use something called nanozeolite, which we use to bind out heavy metals, and Mediclay, which is like a bentonite clay. And then there are several companies that have oral mechanisms to get rid of heavy metals, but that would be my favorite. And that's the one where I've tested before and afters, and I know that it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I was just looking recently at blood pressure, and I've been looking at the heavy metal cadmium. And apparently, there's a huge connection between high cadmium levels and high blood pressure. And when you get those heavy metals out, but most people wouldn't think about that. But I've never heard of that before. But it's interesting. I'm reading all about the connection between heavy metals and just blood pressure.
Yeah, one of the ways to look at it is that the magnesium in the blood vessels is one of the main ingredients that's responsible for keeping those blood vessels in a relaxed place. A heavy metal, by definition, displaces magnesium, a lighter metal on the periodic table. So anytime you have a heavy metal, you're going to be displacing magnesium and calcium in the neurological system, in the vascular system, and all over the body. So
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
where you get the effects from.
Okay, got another question here from Really Organic. Does Dr. Pati believe it's possible to be healthy on a vegan or vegetarian diet?
So this is a really good question. If you look at the vegetarian diet and the vegan diet, and you really start to talk to people who are eating them, you may find that the principle of eating real food is not at the top, because a lot of times vegetarians are eating a lot of processed carbs, and vegans are eating a lot of processed and man-made proteins, and there's an explosion of those. So I think it's difficult to talk about just being vegan or being vegetarian. What matters is, are you eating real food? Are you eating clean food? Are you aware of what's in your food? Like, are you preparing it yourself or getting it from somewhere else? It doesn't matter what restaurant labels food as a certain way. It's never the same as you getting your own vegetable and eating it. Now, let's talk about nutrition. What I have noticed when I do actual nutritional testing on people who are vegan and vegetarian, and I have been both, um, is just that the nutritional profile isn't where it should be. And that probably has to do with exactly what it is that the choices are that they're eating. It's not that you can't reach it, but you generally don't reach it. The other interesting thing to note is that if you look at the long living cultures where people's at the cell level do not actually degenerate until the 70s and the 80s, whereas if you look at the United States, our cell level degeneration is starting around the age of 35. What you find is there are no long living people that are vegan. And all long living people have fasting as part of the regular routine. It's either the food supply runs out in November and they're fasting for, a month. I mean, it's what they do. So I don't think that it can be generalized about it. And I believe that you have to really pay attention to what your actual nutrition levels are and eating real food. I think that's more important than whether you label yourself vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah, I hear you. There's an interesting question here coming up from Dale, and he asks, what are your views on Arjuna bark for heart health? And I've never heard of that until I just looked it up right now. Are you familiar with that?
Nope, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this
Yeah.
up on screen for those that are
Sorry.
watching live, and it's interesting. I just brought it up, and let me show this on screen here. And I just typed it in. It's Arjuna bark, and it says here, commonly known as Arjuna, belongs to the family of, I don't even know how to say that. This bark decoction is being used in the Indian subcontinent for anginal pain, hypertension, congestive heart failure, and dyslipidemia based on observations of ancient physicians for centuries. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that if you take a restorative or regenerative approach, like what I was saying with the 5-point model, our use of herbs is very low because what we're really doing is obviously this is a herb, so the body doesn't normally have this herb in it. Most blood pressure is caused by the again, the imbalances in the 5-point model. It's going to be caused by a heart rate variability that's incoherent. That's the number one top cause. The second one is magnesium deficiency. Magnesium. And part of the reason why it's deficient is because the nervous system is using it up. The third one is the lack of enough circular oxygen to the microcirculation. The fourth one is that the adrenal axis is off. And the fifth one is that people aren't drinking enough fluids and the pH is too low. So once you correct that, I haven't seen anybody in thousands of patients who hasn't been able to correct blood pressure just doing that. So our use of herbs for blood pressure is lower. It's not a bad choice. It's just, it's not always necessary.
Good stuff. And in the chat room, Ray wants to know about the Anastasia books. Yeah, that is the one they're called the Ringing Cedars. That's the one that we're talking about. Another question was, what do you have to say about Dave Asprey saying that more heart rate variability is related to better because less normally means that a person is under constant stress state, using breath work to increase the variability? I'm not sure exactly what she means by that. Do you know?
I'm not sure, but what's important is the pattern. We have extremely good studies showing that the coherent, smooth pattern replenishes the human body. It doesn't burn through your nutrients. It doesn't give you an IBS pattern. Not only do we have data in the literature, but I have at this point used those and measured those tracings in probably over about 2,000 patients. So I've had the blessing of being able to note the connection between that and what their bowel is doing. Literally, if somebody comes to me with IBS, I probably spend about 30 days just teaching them how to do that, and most often it's gone. So we could have given them a herb, we could have given them all these things, but instead put them in the driver's seat by teaching them how to breathe and how to correct the pattern. So I don't know what exactly the question's asking, more or less heart rate variability, but the pattern does matter.
Here's a good one from Lala Bear. I like that name. Where to start if your hormones are out of whack, feeling anemic, menstruation issues, etc.? Dr. Pati, do you see people on Skype or does everyone have to come into your clinic?
Well, at the moment, based upon the way that our health laws are structured, we have to see people at least once in the office per year.
Okay.
And so that's what we're doing.
Okay. So where would someone start if they're having some hormonal issues, they're feeling out of whack and they're anemic? Where would you start with someone like that?
Well, maybe this person can tell me what state they're located in, because we do have a training program and have taught many people the 5-point model. And if I know maybe I can do it after the show, but if I know what state they're in, I can actually refer them to someone. But the general answer to that has to be that you can keep filling your tank with hormones and with nutrients. But at the end of the day, if you have a lifestyle and a speed of an engine that is faster than what the fuel tank has in it. It's like having a hole at the bottom of the bucket. So although as an OBGYN, I started out in the field of balancing people's hormones and optimizing them to the 75th percentile, I realized very quickly that if you don't help them manage and balance their lifestyle, you're not balancing anything. Second of all, you have to find a practitioner that's willing to correct you to the 75th percentile. And the most pertinent area where people see this undercorrected is thyroid. Right now, there's very few people above the age of 35 that have full thyroid activity because of 5G, because of chaos, because stress-related down regulation of the thyroid receptors. So you will see that 90% of people with low thyroid function will go to the practitioner and get their thyroid checked and will be told you're in the normal range, which is between the 10th and the 90th percentile. But suppose you're 35 years old and you're sitting at the 15th percentile, which is normal. You're still having lower energy, lower mental clarity, lower memory, focus, concentration. You're still having low mood and depression, unexplained weight gain, possibly dry hair, dry skin, cold hands, cold feet, elevated cholesterol, since it's controlled by thyroid and adrenal, possibly constipation, brittle hair, hair loss. There's a whole list of symptoms. So finding somebody who's willing to treat you and not the lab, and they exist. There's a growing number of health practitioners that are in that space right now. And if I get the question directly from the person and know what state they're in, I can actually direct them to somebody.
Well, the cool thing is it's Lala Bear on YouTube, and she just said that she's in Pennsylvania. And there's a few people asking about your trainings too, so I'll ask you about that. But do you know of anybody in Pennsylvania?
We do have somebody that I know of in New Jersey. Don't know of Pennsylvania, but in New Jersey, Smitha Ori is one of the doctors that's in New Jersey that's properly trained. And we also have somebody in New York.
Oh, cool.
A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll come down here and get established, and we'll start off correcting stuff. And then they'll find a functional medicine doctor that's close to them that will take it from there. Because honestly, our aim when we see patients is to empower them to be in the driver's seat for their own health and to get to the point where they really don't need us. If they still continue to need a hormonal prescription or something where they need a doctor for, it's always better to hook up with someone local. But by that time, they've already got all the knowledge, the power. They know exactly what they're looking for.
That's so cool. A couple
and we are training. We're training. We're really actively training more practitioners through the International Congress of Regenerative Medicine. One of our immune function conferences is actually launching in Captiva Island.
Oh my gosh,
next
how cool.
June. So yeah, it's a regenerative experience, and we expect to have really put out how do you empower people to get a hold of their own immune system.
Right. That's good stuff. A couple questions here about your training. Brandy wants to know, how can you join your training? And then Simply Laura has a question. Do you have any trainings in California?
Yeah, so for practitioners, we have an East Coast and a West Coast workshops. And then we also have a training that's called Regenerative Health Coach, which we launched last year. And it went so well that we're in the process of putting it online. And we'll be offering it sometime in 2020. If they actually stay tuned onto our website, which you've given, they're going to see that that's going to launch. And what we're doing in that regenerative health coach, it was fantastic to watch how, regenerative health coaches, we didn't have a requirement on their background, only on the intention that they are intending to help people take the driver's seat. So we taught them all the pieces of the 5-point model and how to approach it. And I know 3 regenerative health coaches right now that are completely full just doing that, because
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's super cool because they're not, it's not, doesn't need a physician in there. There will be needs for physicians. I'm not saying there won't be. Maybe there are needs for healthcare practitioners, but the majority of our health is what you try to do is make it the least number of steps with the number of interventional supplements and things, so that it's practical and doable. Has to be as easy as brushing your teeth.
I know, right? That's the key, is just making it simple and easy. I think that's so important, because that way people will do it.
Yep.
Final question, Fatima, haven't found anybody in Tennessee, unfortunately, because Tennessee is very pro medical doctor. Do you know of anybody in Tennessee?
I do. I don't know them right now.
Okay.
So I can't remember, but but I think there is somebody in Tennessee. And actually what you're going to find, you should be very confident that you will find exactly the right person for you, because there's a shift happening. And when I tell you that 20% of our patients are actually healthcare practitioners, doctors, DOs, there's a shift happening. And physicians are looking for, a lot of times some of these larger conferences, practitioners who are keen to learn this, they'll go to them and there'll be so much data and so many pieces of wonderful information. When they come back into their practice, it's hard to actually do anything with it, because it's a tidbit here and a tidbit there. It doesn't allow you to really take care of somebody. So in our trainings and our conference, we're really have pared it down to regenerative protocols that work with greater than 85% results with the least number of steps and capsules. That's taken us, 15 years, hundreds of doctors putting it in their practice and thousands of patients. But it's pretty cool because it's simplified down. It's not like you're doing some real complicated thing to get yourself into a good place.
It's so cool that you're doing what you're doing, because, I honestly feel really bad for medical doctors that only use, prescription drugs and medications, because not only are people being more informed with shows like this and the work that you do, people are just learning more. So they're asking their doctors a lot more questions, and the doctors don't have answers because they're spending all this time with patients and running their business. But it's so cool because the work that you do, like, it opens up this whole world of possibility from all the different services that you give. It must feel really good to prescribe things and know that not only is it not damaging them from the physiological perspective, but it's also helping them. Like, that's got to feel really good to you.
Yeah, I feel very grateful and very blessed because when I started in this, there was no real plan, like, oh, I'm going to do this. The way was paved and shown to me because of necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention. And when you see the state that we're in, this is a common sense that we have to empower people to take their healthcare back into their hands. And to do that, you have to simplify and simplify and simplify, not make it more and more complicated.
So you just said empower people. So you were telling me before the show that you're in the process of starting a podcast, and people will listen to this, 2-3 years in advance. So at the time that they're listening to this, your podcast will most likely be out. It's not out yet, but you're working on it, right?
Yes, it was recommended to me by many people around me that I learned how to do a podcast. So I went technically usually very challenged. The fact that we actually have a mic that's working and I got earphones on actually came from the fact that I purchased this equipment to learn how to do the podcast. So I named my podcast Take Your Power Back by Dr. Patty. And I'm supposed to record a couple of them before launching it. So I'm in the process.
That's so cool. And so will they be like shows where you do most of the talking, or you invite colleagues on, or what's the format?
Oh, both. I would hope to have a very heavily interview. I have a lot of top-notch colleagues in this field because I was in the teaching and faculty for the A4M and AMMG and many of these conferences that are geared towards this. So I'm just looking to interview all of my colleagues.
How cool. That's so fun.
Yeah.
That's so great. So with someone listening to this or watching this, how could they connect with you? What can they do if they want to see you? Obviously, you mentioned once a year they would need to see you physically, but if someone wants to work with their hormones and work with you, what would be the steps they'd take to do that?
They would, on the website, we have a phone number. They would just call the phone number and they can let them know that they heard about me through this. And if there's a way for us to refer them to somebody that's close to them, we certainly would do that, because if you're able to give people avenues that are less stressful, like traveling all the way to Orlando for some people and staying here, other than the fact that most people make the best of Mickey Mouse when they're here. But if that's not the aim, it can be kind of stressful. So, but we actually have people who come here who have more advanced conditions, and they're here for 4 to 6 weeks until we can turn those things around. And that's not what I hope for anybody. So the best way to reach us is just go through the website, call the phone number. And if there's any buddy who wants to know about doctors in their area, just ask that question and I will get back to you.
Oh, cool. And is Sajune, SAJUNE.com the best website? I saw another one for you, but I'm not sure if that's the right one.
So Sajune is the institute where we take care of patients. MDPrescriptives is a very limited supplement line, which is made with the vibration of love, and it supports the specific protocols that we use. And then we have ICRM, which is International Congress of Regenerative Medicine, which is our venue for teaching. So I think that Sajune.com is the best way to reach us, because that way we can hook you up with somebody. And next year, I should hope to be hooking you guys up with regenerative health coaches. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah. That's so awesome.
That can achieve the same results. Yeah.
Gosh, you are, what are you? Are you not writing a book? I mean, you're just conquering the world. It's like you're super busy. It's great.
It's kind of funny. Everybody was asking me to write a book a long time ago, and I started, and then a patient came through my door who handed me a book and said, "Do you mind writing the foreword to this book?" It was called Feeling Funkabulous, and it turned out that it was her story of visiting us, and she had written it from a patient's perspective. And it was a story, and all of the medical facts were like in these little boxes. And I looked at it and I said, she's already done it. But one of these days, I understand a good way to do that would be to just dictate it and have somebody.
There you go. You could dictate it, while you're on your rebounder or something.
Yes, exactly.
That's so cool. Well, Doc, thanks so much for spending some time. I know that you mentioned you came to your office today for this, so I really appreciate the work that you do and spending time with us. So thank you very much.
You are very welcome, and I really appreciate the work you do. I am so happy that you are, out there engaging people to take a front seat. So. And anybody who's listening to your show or listening to this show, I would congratulate you for taking the time to be in the driver's seat for your own health.
Yeah, so thanks for that. And I just feel like there's so much media coming at us from all these different directions, and most of it is unconscious, and what we're aiming to do and what you're aiming to do is to help put a body of work out into the world that people can sort of nibble on and sort of explore as they see fit, to help empower themselves, like you're saying with your radio show, take back your power, because so much of life is disempowering and we need to take it back. So yeah. It's good stuff. All right, Doc. Well, thank you again for your time. You're awesome. You're amazing. And tell Dr. Apsley I said hello. We loved having him on our show a few years ago.
Will.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yes, I absolutely will. Yes,
awesome.
He is amazing. I've learned a lot of the stuff from him.
Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah. All right, Doc. Well, I'll be in touch via email, and I'll send you a link to this when it's done, and feel free to pass it on to whoever you like. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Awesome. Thanks, Doc. Okay. All right, guys. Well, there you go. Dr. Sangeeta Pati. I hope you guys enjoyed that show. If you guys want to check out her website, it is Sajune, SAJUNE.com, and you can learn more about everything she's up to. And I've got a couple of thoughts to share with you. A lot of you guys are making some cool comments in the chat room, so I've got a couple things to share. But we're going to take a little break, and we can kind of all sort of take a breath and digest this show. And if you have any questions for me specifically about any of the things that she said, feel free to ask. And just a really, really good show. And I hope you guys enjoyed it a lot. So we'll be right back right after this little break.
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Thanks for being on this health journey with us. And don't forget to check out biochargeme.com for hundreds of health products to build a better you.
Yeah, one of the products that she mentioned, actually a couple of them that are available, the Defender Shield as well as the heart rate variability are both available on biocharge.me if you guys want to check those out. We have hundreds of products, like Kate said, on there that we're adding to on a regular basis. And so a lot of this stuff, the way we support the show, is through the different sort of products that we have on biocharge.me. And one of the things I wanted to tell you guys about, I kind of mentioned it to her at the end, was this idea of rebounding and jumping up and down on a rebounder. So check out what Dr. Sam Byrne has to say about the effect of rebounding and how it affects your vision. Really interesting.
I wanted to mention about rebounders just for a minute. There's been some studies that rebounders bring down the eye pressure in glaucoma, and it's something that I recommend for people who've been diagnosed with glaucoma. And I've done a lot of videos on the connection between the lymph system and eye health. So I'm right there with you. I think the rebounder is a great activity for improving eye lymph and overall lymph health.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, because what people talk about it, and it being a cellular exercise, you go to the gym and you can't work out like, cells in your body or different areas of your body, like your nose and your eyes and things like that. But jumping up and down, it affects every cell in your body, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It impacts the meridians, as you say, the lymph circulation, the cerebral spinal fluid. So, and a lot of people just have lymph chi stagnation. They're not getting enough movement, partly because we're sitting and looking at screens all day.
Mm-hmm. Our modern culture is so crazy, everything we do. Yeah, so if you guys are interested in bringing one of these into your life, you probably saw, if you're on YouTube, me jumping up and down on a rebounder. I do mine outside, and I usually listen to podcasts and try to learn and breathe through my nose. And it's really such a tremendous exercise, and I cannot recommend it enough. As far as longevity and disease prevention and staying healthy, like there's no better exercise than jumping up and down on a rebounder. It's so great for your lymphatic system, for bone density, circulation, and really opening and closing the millions of one-way valves we have in our lymph system. There's no other way to do that. You could do it through running, but the impact on your joints is pretty tough. So this essentially eliminates all of the impact on your joints. And so I have a torn ACL, and I'm able to jump on the Bellicon perfectly. It jumps for you like you're just jumping on air. What's cool about the Bellicon too is that you can fold the legs, and it's foldable, and it lasts forever. I mean, we've had ours for about 8 years now, and I just changed the springs for the first time, I think a few months ago. So jumping up and down should be a part of everyone's, I think, detox strategy. It's really great to do before you get in the sauna too, because then you can jump up and down, cleanse that lymphatic system fluid in your body, and then you can start sweating that stuff out as it becomes more in your interstitial fluid in the serum of your blood, and that way you can oscillate that stuff out. And it's just a really great sort of 1-2 combo for jumping up and down, then getting in a rebounder and sweating all of those toxins and chemicals out. And if you guys are interested, the one that we recommend is the Bellicon, and that's available on biocharge.me, so you guys can check those out if you're interested in doing that. And the other thing I want to tell you guys about too was the products from Ancestral Supplements. So we've been doing a lot of research lately on copper and iron and learning about the interplay between the body's ability to use bioavailable copper to regulate iron, and then how magnesium regulates calcium and copper regulates iron. And if you look at what iron is doing to the body, specifically oxidized iron, It's really, really bad. It suffocates the cells, and most people think they're anemic when they're not. And that's because we've got lipid peroxidation, or what they call lipofuscin, or polyunsaturated fatty acids. So these oxidized iron and oxidized omega-3 fats are starving the body's ability to utilize oxygen and carry oxygen. And the show we did with Morley Robbins was really critical in this regard, because what he was saying was we have about 25 trillion red blood cells in our body, and if you sort of look at the surface area of every one of those 25 trillion cells, it would cover the space of an entire football field. And so that's how much iron we're dealing with. But if we don't have any copper to deal with that, then it becomes overwhelming to the body. And then if you were to regulate the amount of copper that you have or measure the amount of copper you have to regulate all that iron, it comes out to about 4 pennies of copper in that football field of iron. So what's challenging about that is that not only now it's 4 pennies, but now through the iron fortification program and iron in our food and the acid rain, which liberates iron from the soil and all this stuff, our copper's dwindling. So the best source of copper is organ meats. And I bet you're thinking, I don't want to eat organ meats. Who wants to eat organ meats, right? It's gross. It is, but maybe a good transition would be some of these products from Ancestral Supplements. Super high in copper, which helps to regulate excess unbound or bound iron in the system. And so we have collagen, we've got liver, we've got beef brain with liver, beef lung, we've got spleen, bone marrow, bovine tracheal cartilage, but beef liver, desiccated beef organs, and grass-fed beef liver capsules are going to be what you're looking for here. But I recommend these because although not nearly as good as eating the organs themselves, it's a good transition from this culture we live in to eating some more of these ancestral foods that we evolved eating. And so this is really great. So if you go onto biocharge.me and look under the animal section, you'll see these products here from Ancestral Supplements, and I would really recommend these. And then finally, just a little brief aside, I'm really super excited to be standing behind Mitolife's digestion and enzyme products, and I really like these things a lot. I've been using them myself, and with awesome results. So we've got some, there's one that I don't use that he has. It's called Gluten Savior, and if you eat gluten, it's really great to have on hand accidentally. But these Gluten Savior ones are for people that eat gluten. I don't eat gluten, so I've never really tried those ones, but I have tried and used the Dissolve It All and the Digest It All. So the Dissolve It All is what helps to dissolve fibrosis and calcification and breaking down those tissues in your body that cause excess iron and all that to peroxidize. And so Dissolve It All is really tremendous for cleaning up your blood. These enzymes are like little Pac-Men. They go through your blood and they essentially eat up chemicals and things that shouldn't be there. And so taking these on an empty stomach is critical for your health. I take them before bed and when I wake up, and then I take his Digest It All before meals. So these are really good. And as well his Shilajit product and the PUFA Protect product, which is the vitamin E, which helps to get rid of polyunsaturated fatty acid peroxidation in your tissues and helps to get that out of the body using vitamin E. So some really good products. So these are all from Mitolife. They're available on biocharge.me. And if you use the code EHR25, thank you, Mr. Matt Blackburn. I don't know if he's given that code out to anybody, but thank you. So you guys get 25% off of these products. So I like supporting people, good people doing good work, people that are interesting, people that are into researching and all that kind of stuff. So I really like that a lot. So I'm really happy to support Matt and his work and all of that. So let me come back into the chat room, and I'll do that right after this little break.
Extreme Health Radio is your #1 resource for cutting-edge biohacks, news, and information about how to upgrade every area of your health. Subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.
Yeah, so in our newsletter, we send those out every Monday and Thursday mornings, and you get to keep up to date with all of our shows and our upcoming shows and our past shows. Many of our past shows you probably never heard before. So a lot of cool stuff happening on our newsletter, and any sales of products or anything like that, we let you know about in the newsletter, and we send those out, I think around 6 a.m. California time. And it's really great. It's really great to connect with you guys, because who knows how long we're going to be able to have YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. So if you sign up to our newsletter, you'll get access to everything that we have going on. All right, so let me see if you guys have any questions for me about this show. I hope you enjoyed it. She was a really cool lady. I liked her a lot. And when I first heard her with David Wolf, I really connected to what she was saying. And what she was saying before the show was interesting, because she was talking about, like, I said, are you okay with people calling up on Skype, you know? And she said, of course, like, we have to connect with people in any way we possibly can to help as many people as we can. And I just thought that was really cool. You can see people's heart, you know, when they, you know, she was off the air. And so that was really cool. I really liked her a lot. Dale says, fasting often corrects hormone imbalances. We all eat too often. Take 3 days off, water only, easier than you think. Then next month, try a 5-day powerful healer. I add prayer. Nice. I'm glad you guys are really into this stuff, because it's a fascinating thing when you think about our health, and you think, like, from the people that are in our lives, like your friends. Think about your friends and think about your family. And most likely, you and I are just listening to this. We're a part of this community, and we're just taking in this information. But our friends and family, like, we're on this sort of evolution journey of trying to become better people. And usually one of the best ways to get into that whole field is, you know, personal development. The best and easiest way to get involved in becoming a better person is through your diet and through health, because that's something that you can easily manipulate, right? Like, you can buy a Bellicon Rebounder, or you can buy a blender. You can start changing your diet. These are things that are tangible, easy to do. You just have to either buy it or use it or start doing something. And that's a great way to get involved in the personal development sort of space. And so it's a great metric to sort of have as your catalyst to becoming someone better, because once you're a better person in that way, and you've developed a little bit of discipline in your life, you start feeling better about yourself, right? You start feeling like, wow, like, you know, I set out to work out 3 days a week, and it's Friday, and I haven't worked out yet, and it's 8 o'clock at night, and maybe I just don't have to work out today, right? Or maybe I have to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is that you're doing. And then you say, you know what, I'm choosing to be a different person. And the type of person that I am is someone who sticks to their commitments. And then so you work out at 8 o'clock. And I've done this multiple times. I use working out as my example here, but it could be anything. And then just the very act of doing what you set out to do, even if it's unhealthy, like maybe you should be asleep at 8 o'clock, right? Or maybe you shouldn't be doing whatever it is you set out to do. But just the fact that you said, I'm going to do this, and then you could have easily said, no, I'm too tired, I'm going to go to bed. You made yourself do it. Just that act alone is really powerful on your subconscious mind, because it embeds this idea of this new sort of person that you're creating. You're creating a new person. You're creating someone, an alter ego of sorts. And this is what the alter ego does. This is what the highest version of yourself does. That person is someone who follows through on their commitments, who is on time, who, lives and eats and breathes what they teach. That person is someone who you can respect and someone who you can trust. And so when you start carrying out the commitments and the disciplines of the things that you set out to do, that act alone is enough to sort of change the person who you are. And you start moving in this direction of being a better person all around, because now you have a little bit more energy. You have a little bit more, your hormones might be shifting a little bit. You might have a little more testosterone because you're maybe blocking blue light on your thyroid, or maybe you're doing things that are going to be protective of your hormonal health. So now you just have a little bit more energy to be a better father or a better mother, or you have a little bit more energy to be a better student, or maybe you have a little bit more energy to carry out those things in a nicer way with people. And so health is a great way, a great avenue for personal growth, and because it allows you to track and keep metrics of your disciplines. And so I love what she talks about, taking your power back. Does she have any physicians she can recommend out here in California? I would simply, Laura, I would call her clinic and maybe ask, because it'd be worth asking. Fatima, thanks for asking my question. Truly, this podcast always blows my mind. So many amazing guests. Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot. We do our best to bring good people to you, people who we think are actually in this field for the right reasons and actually wants to help people. And so that's why we do what we do, because, I mean, frankly, you probably listening to this and your friends, right? I mean, how many people do you know? I mean, think about your own life. How many people in your life do you know that are sick or who are closed-minded or things like that? Like, we're looking at, I mean, she said on the show, 1 out of every 3 children going to public school is on some kind of medication. 1 out of every 2 people are being diagnosed with cancer. The incidence of chronic degenerative disease in today's world is so high that, like, if you just live the modern lifestyle, you're going to get sick. There's just, because if it's not, see, cancer right now is 50%, but cancer itself is one of like 30 different things that are sort of trending right now with like Alzheimer's disease and cognitive disorders and things like that. So it's like, we really have to do our best to mitigate from what's happening in our environment. And that's is where I would start is fixing your home environment and your work environment. Fixing the environment to be to facilitate your desire to be a better person, I think, is really important. And I think before the environment, I think you have to work on sort of some personal growth and some success principles like that. And building discipline is a great way to do that, because it allows you to feel good about yourself, because you're the kind of person who does these things and it makes you feel good to do that. And once you start investing in yourself, it becomes a snowball, because you start loving yourself more. You start realizing, I've got gifts, I've got talents that maybe I've never explored before. Now that I'm taking care of myself, I feel like I have some discipline, and now I've got more energy and I can invest in these different projects that I've never really told anyone about, or maybe I've never explored because I've been too busy or too tired. So now you got a little bit of extra energy and you feel good about yourself, and it becomes this cascade effect. And the best part about it is that it affects those around you as well. So it's sort of like a complete 180 of your entire life, and using health as a way to get there. So that's what we're all about. Yeah. Pirate Pete. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I got here late. I guess I missed the show. Oh, well, I'll rewatch it later. I hope all is well with everyone. Thank you, guys. You know what's really cool about you guys is that for some reason, I don't know why, but we have, like, you guys that join us in the chat are so cool. And we always have such great people in the chat room. And what's crazy is that there's a lot of trolls on YouTube, and for some reason we just don't get any of that. So it's really cool. Dr. Ace, sorry tuning in late. I know it's a great show. Aloha, Extreme Health family. Dr. Ace, thanks for joining us, my friend. I think you are a member of the Extreme Health Academy too. I think I saw you in the forums. And I think Beck asked you, are you the same Dr. Ace Harden that's in the chat room? So that's cool, Doc. I think thanks for being here. That's cool. Yeah, you guys are awesome. All of you guys. Brandy, you're so welcome. Beck, thanks again for another great show. You never disappoint. And thanks, Doc. Well, I appreciate it. I pick up a lot of tidbits about health from different practitioners. And here's one of the things I was thinking about lately. I think that it's so important for health practitioners, every health doctor, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but every health doctor and every person that's seeking to help other people as a health coach or whatever it is that they're titled as, nutritionist, every one of those people, in my opinion, should be listening to podcasts like this. Or there's other podcasts too. Like, there's a lot of amazing people. So Dr. Pati, she's got all of this knowledge, right? She's got 30 years of just experiential knowledge, but she's probably got like 40 years of actual study time. Right? So she's been looking at things that we've never looked at. I've been looking at things that she's never looked at, and putting all the pieces together is super important. And I think that with a lot of doctors themselves, I think every doctor should be listening to other doctors on podcasts like this, so that they can get a broader perspective. And what's I find to be a little disheartening with some of the guests on our show, I'd say probably a lot, I don't know, but I don't think a lot of the guests on our show listen to podcasts. I don't know why, because I'll mention other people and they've never heard of them. And their work is like seminal, like someone I've been studying recently is Dr. Jack Kruse, as well as Morley Robbins, doing a lot of work in that, as well as people like Dr. Massey. And there's some foundational people I think are really critical to know about. And if you don't know about these other people and their work, like someone like Dr. Kruse, for example, he's just studying light, like magnetism and non-native EMF and blue light and how light affects our mitochondria. And he's spending all of his time focusing on that. And for someone to not know who that guy is or how his work impacts our genetic expression, I think it's really, I don't think it does a lot of people service, And so I think that's maybe where I come in a little bit, is because I'm always listening to podcasts. It's just what I love to do. And obviously we've done over 650 shows. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I just love learning about this kind of stuff and getting perspectives from many different people. And so when someone asks for some help, I try to give different aspects of things maybe they've never heard of, like, using, like this idea of blue light and how it affects thyroid health, or the Bob Beck protocol, or parasite removal, or like all these pieces where I can pull from our guests and help people explore different options. And I don't know, it's just something I've been thinking about lately. All right, so here we go. Let's see, gonna check more of your questions. Yeah, okay. There's a lot that I missed from the beginning. Just kind of scrolling through the YouTube chat here. Yeah, I appreciate you guys a lot. Dale, Big Fat Mama, Really Organic, Lala Bear. The chemtrails contain fluoride and AI nanobots, which alter and deteriorize. Is that how you say deteriorize our DNA, just like 5G, which also causes brain tumors and headaches. That's from Rudy Loves Color 200 on YouTube. The chemtrails contain fluoride and AI nanobots. Yeah, you know what? It's a challenging world, right? You look at, this is why it's really important to grow your food. If you're going to grow food and eat vegetables, the ideal way to do that is under a greenhouse where you're protecting this food from these chemicals in the air. And, if you look at the work of Barbara Frank, who we had on our show, an herbalist, an old-time herbalist, and, she was talking about how parasites are now airborne, and fungi is airborne as well, and you're looking at chemtrails raining down chemicals on you, regardless of if we know what they are. And then we have acid rain coming down on us from our environment, and tire dust coming from not just freeways, but also airports as well. And so we have all this sort of these chemicals in the air, and if we're not protecting our garden from that, we're getting so many chemicals, even if it's grown organically. So that's why a greenhouse, I think, is becoming almost necessary now if you're going to have your own garden. That way you're not getting all this stuff, because all these chemicals in the air and this acid rain is liberating massive amounts of iron that's in our soils. 36% of the earth is iron, and so this gets liberated in the soils, and so the copper in the soil is regulating that so that we don't get too much iron in the food. But it's something to think about. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about the chemtrails, but I know they're not good. I tested Mountain Valley spring water, and it had an acidic pH and made me not feel good. Mountain Valley spring water, interesting. Okay, Satan is in the music and entertainment industries along with everything. Yeah. Man, you look into the crazy, weird world of the Hollywood and all that. Jeez. Talk about dark. That's some dark stuff. Yeah. Be careful what you bring into your system when it comes to entertainment. I started a drumming circle in my small world. No way, Beck. That's awesome. Started with just me a year ago. We now are 10 strong. That's so cool. Drumming circle. That's awesome, Beck. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Really Organic says, wow, I really like this doctor. I just put a bunch of interviews with her on my Watch Later playlist. Thanks, Justin. You always have interesting guests. I respect how you are searching for truth. Really Organic. Yeah, thank you. I think it's innate within all of us to search for truth. And I don't mean just truth in one field. Like, I want to know what's really going on with everything in life, not just nutrition, because the nutrition side for this stuff is just basically giving me the energy and a healthy body for me to be able to carry out my work and do things that matter, And so searching for truth, it's like Pilate said, right, in the Bible, what is truth? And that's what we're trying to figure out. Christian, let's see. Lala Bear, great point about the doctors listening to podcasts, etc. You made me remember my underlying fear that if I pick a practitioner, they may not see the big picture or like all of the variables. From Lala Bear. Yeah, it is true. It's true because there's a lot of people that just don't know about other people's work. And I think it's sad. And what it ultimately does is it makes a person like you and me have to have a team of doctors, 4 or 5 different people in our team because the doctors don't know what the other doctors are saying. And so, in my opinion, every doctor should be listening to podcasts. It's at this point, it's becoming almost necessary. Christiane says, sorry, I disagree with the greenhouse. All you need is pure sun on your veggies. Yeah, I disagree with that because all of this stuff is in our environment, and you can't get rid of this stuff that's floating around in the air, and it's making its way into our soils. I use the Back to Eden method. Look up under Paul Ghostushi on YouTube is a documentary. Yeah, I'll look that up. I'm open to everything, but for me, it's I can't be convinced that our environment is clean enough to grow food in. I won't say I can't be convinced because you always want to have an open mind, but I'll look into that. Yeah, interesting. Cool. Always good things. Always new rabbit trails, right, to look into with your health. So, and with everything as well, as long as you have an open mind. Well, we got no callers. Hopefully next on Monday, some of you guys will call us. That would be cool. Extreme Health Radio on Skype. And we usually try to time those after the first break, around a half hour in, because with Skype, I can't put a call on hold. So if we're in the middle of a conversation and I get a Skype call, I can't put that on hold. So a little bit challenging that way. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that show. That was a lot of fun. Please pass it on to your friends, if you would, and let other people know about it. If you're following us on Instagram, that would be great to sort of tag or take a screenshot of your show, of this show, and share it on Instagram if you would. That would be really cool. I really would appreciate that. That would help spread the word to more people and to help more people know that there's options out there, and that's really ultimately what we're all about. So thank you for joining us. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you guys haven't joined the Extreme Health Academy yet, I love how I mentioned this at the very end of the podcast, but we take things even further inside the Academy, and we've got, I think, about 21 courses in there right now. The most recent one was all about blood pressure, and we've got courses on cancer, diabetes, blood sugar, on immune system, digestion, all kinds of courses, and we release them every month. And there's also Q&A, there's live workshops, and all the tools to sort of give you the ability, the inspiration, but also mostly like the education to understand how the body works so that you can take care of it in a better, more precise way. And then there's the community aspect of the forums too, where I'm in there just about every day helping, sharing some insights and some ideas that might help you. So if you want a free access to that, there's a link in the bio below if you're watching on YouTube, and just use code EHR14, and that will give you a free 14-day trial. Come and say hello in the forums. Let me know you joined, and I'd love to sort of correspond with you and help. That's why I do what I do. So I just hate people suffering. And what's worse is suffering without even knowing they have options, right? That's the worst. So just want to let everyone know there are options, and if you seek long enough, you will find them. So love you guys all very, very much. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening on a podcast, I'll put a link to the Extreme Health Academy at extremehealthradio.com/639, which was today's episode. Love you all. Have a great weekend. Have some fun. And tag me on Instagram. Let me know what you're up to. And I'll see you on Monday at 10:45. Thanks for joining us.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.